All right, welcome back to the channel, guys. Before we get going, make sure you comment, share, subscribe, and smash that like button. I'm just kidding. Some of you are probably cringing right now. But for real, welcome back to Life Group and to our series on fractures in relationships and resolving conflict as Christians. So far in this series, we have talked about the gospel as the foundation for resolving conflict. We've looked at 7 biblical rules, general rules for resolving conflict. And last week we did part 1, talking about fights with our family, and we talked about conflict with our parents and how we should approach that. This week we are doing part 2, and we are talking about fights with our siblings, fractures in relationships with our siblings. So let me paint a couple of pictures for you. It's a normal day before school, you're downstairs eating breakfast, and your sister comes down the stairs and she is wearing your favorite shirt without asking to borrow it again. So you say, "What are you doing?" And she says, "What?" And you know that she knows what you're talking about. And you say, "Please don't take my stuff without asking." And she says, "I already asked to borrow it last time." And you say, "It would be nice if you ask every time, that way I know where it is." Another picture, you're hanging out with your friends and your little brother comes in the room and starts messing around and trying to get involved, and you're just like, "Bro, Timmy, get out, leave us alone." And he's like, "Mom told me that I could hang out with you and that I could play with you." And you're like, "Mom, why?" While those are smaller, maybe more everyday examples, many of you have had worse fights than that with your siblings. And if we're not careful, if we don't seek reconciliation, those fractures can grow and possibly break and destroy a relationship completely with your siblings. Before we move on, I want you to pause the video here and answer the following questions. Just a few questions to get us started and thinking about this. Okay, hopefully you guys are remembering and applying how the gospel is the foundation for resolving conflict and reviewing those rules and applying those as well. I do want to give just 2 quick reasons, again, about why we fight with our siblings. I think it's helpful to understand why these things happen so we can prevent them from happening, and if they do happen, we can work at solving the problem. So the first reason that I think siblings fight a lot: pride, sibling rivalry. We want to win. We want to be right. Nobody likes being beaten by their younger siblings. I know my younger brother Blake was always more athletic than I was, and it was obnoxious. He could just pick up random skills and be good at random games. One time on vacation, we played shuffleboard for the first time, and Blake beat me in almost every single game, and I hated losing to my younger brother. Nobody likes when their brother or sister is right and you are wrong. Pride is the root of a lot of conflict, and especially conflict with our siblings. This goes back to some of the general rules of taking responsibility. We don't want to take responsibility for the conflict. We want to put it all on our sibling. Very quickly, let me tell you, being right is usually less important than being loving. Being right is usually less important than being loving. Winning is less important than being loving. Now, let me be clear. There are times when your sibling may have sinned against you or is living in sin or is lying to your parents, and it is right for you to call them out and address the sin, but you can still do that in a way that is loving, that is kind, and that seeks their good. If it's coming from a place of pride where you just want to win the argument and put them down and show them that they're wrong, that's not Christ-like. That's not how followers of Christ act. It should be to restore them, to bring them out of sin, and to restore that relationship between you and them and help them restore relationship with Christ. Matthew 23:12 says, "Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted." Students, do not be petty. Silly arguments ruin relationships with siblings. Like I said last week about parents, the way we treat our siblings is a witness to the world. And if we are constantly fighting with our siblings over silly, small things, that is not a good example of how much Christ has forgiven us. If we can't forgive our sister for wearing one of our shirts, if we can't forgive our brother for messing around with our stuff or hanging out with our friends, that is not a reflection of how much Christ has forgiven us. We display Christ's love and forgiveness in the way we treat our siblings. Be kind with them, be patient with them, and I'm sure I'm going to sound like your parents. Just let things go that don't matter. I'm sure you hear that from your parents. Just let it go. Just move on. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill, right? That just means don't make something that's really small and not that big of a deal a bigger deal than it needs to be. Students, God gives us our families. We are meant to be in families with parents, with siblings, and God uses our parents and siblings to sanctify us and to disciple us. Greetings, students. Professor Cruz back again today to explain some of the big words that Pastor Bryce uses. He just said sanctify. Today we're going to talk about the word sanctify. What does sanctify mean, or sanctification mean? In the most basic sense, sanctify means set apart, especially from sin, to make holy. What does this look like more practically or in more detail? Essentially, it means becoming better followers of Christ, becoming more like the God we serve. It looks like putting off sin and putting on holiness. It looks like being made to look more and more like Christ, how he acted, how he talked, his character, his attitude. Once again, becoming better followers of Christ. A few things that I need to make clear. To sanctify does not mean earning one's salvation or earning forgiveness from God. Sanctification comes after salvation, after forgiveness from God. We are saved, and then we are sanctified. You can see this clearly in Ephesians 2, 8 through 9. God saved you by his grace when you believed, and you can't take credit for this. It is a gift from God. Salvation is not a reward for the good things we have done, so none of us can boast. For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the things he planned for us to do long ago. So, Pastor Bryce is saying that God gave you family and friends in order to help make you more like Christ and become better followers of him. Thanks for joining me. I will kick it back to Pastor Bryce and see you again soon. I hope you are grateful for your families and that you are patient and humble toward your siblings and seek to fix those fractures in the relationship, because God fixed the fracture between us and him. I hope this is helpful. I hope this has some ways that you can fix those relationships in your family, and just helps you have a closer relationship with your siblings as you go forward and as you get older. Got a couple of discussion questions. Thanks for being here. I'll talk to you next time.